But I think all publishers we work with today are acutely aware of the fact that this is important, right? It is very important to have a set of first-party data that allows you to have the liberty to basically, create positive outcomes when it comes to revenue. It's not easy. I think a lot of it can be measured, and our publishers work on that measurement, right? Like if you impose a certain gating, partial gating for the content, what exactly is the boost that you get, following that? And so there's a lot of A/B testing that goes on. But I think there is a bit of an arms race at the same time where publishers work on this because there is a real risk that if you take just LLM interfaces like ChatGPT, there is a risk of erosion of open web traffic, right? And we've seen this already. We have this anecdotal evidence from some publishers we work with and hear from where organic traffic coming from Google is in decline, and it goes anywhere from 10 to 30%. But that is like a very specific signal that shows that whatever inventory you do have, whatever traffic you do have, it's important to create value from it because there is a natural erosion of the overall volume. And so all these dynamics are kind of sort of new, but increasingly understood and very important. And so, what is the web, in a year, 2, 3, or 5 years, and what kind of value exchange do we need to set up with the users? I think it's a real problem that needs to be worked on.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm Kevin Lee with the E-Marketing Association. I run a bunch of other ventures as well as a couple of nonprofits. So super tied into the online ad ecosystem, which is why I'm excited to be chatting with Vlad Stesin today, who started Optable. So let's start with the origin story for Optable. So what was it that was the catalyst for you saying, none of these solutions out here are meeting the needs from the clean, privacy compliant clean rooms, and we'll get into what all that is, but yield is critical to publishers. So what was it about the current solution set that was missing that had you decide to start the company?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kevin, of course. So first of all, we're 3 co-founders at Optable. We've been building ad tech for a very long time. Previously, we founded a company called AdGear that was a DSP, ultimately acquired by Samsung Electronics, and became some sort of a genesis, I guess, for the Samsung advertising business. And when we started Optable, it was 2020, so it was the beginning of the pandemic, of course, but it was also kind of the beginning of a new privacy age. So obviously, legislation was starting to proliferate already when it comes to privacy in all sorts of different jurisdictions. And eventually, Google Chrome also announced deprecation or eventual deprecation of third-party cookies. So it really felt like ad tech was really kind of lined up for a big rewiring with everything that's going on. And it's extremely it's an exciting industry, right? Like in ad tech, everything changes like every somewhere between 5 and 8 years. And in 2020 it was kind of the beginning of this privacy age. So that's how Optable came about. So we started the company when lockdowns were happening. It was completely remote at first. And this brings us today to about 55 people and a bunch of great customers and a bright future.
Great. So let's talk about the clean room concept and how first-party data, anonymized first-party data in particular, service everybody's needs. Because obviously there's yield improvements at the publisher side, but I would imagine that consumers seeing more relevant ads is actually also a benefit as well.
Yeah, of course. And look, like Optable, I think first of all, it's not just about clean rooms and data collaboration. The way we see what we do and the job to be done really is to provide ultimately identity management and identity activation services. So more broadly, we're a data collaboration company that also enables monetization of inventory using clean rooms. But there's a lot of work that has to be done that goes into building an identity graph for any given publisher, for any given media company. So that's kind of step one. The job to be done after that is how to better monetize that identity graph. And so there, data collaboration using clean rooms is one of the ways. Increasingly, what we've seen over the past, I would say, year and a half or so, is the use of alternative identifiers also emerged as a major way of increasing yield for publishers as well. So all the way to curation and all the different spokes in these monetization services. But what we realized over time is that really like step one is to properly build an identity graph. That's that is the basis, the foundation of everything that a publisher has to be doing basically this time.
So I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into sort of the publisher broadcaster ecosystem and then the various places where the folks actually consume the ads, where the ad impression shows up, right?
Yep.
So people sort of thought when Google at least temporarily reversed itself on the deprecation of third-party cookies in Chrome, like, oh, now all these solutions we were thinking about are no longer as important. But I mean, the reality is you've got a gigantic mobile ecosystem, and you've got Safari, which is gigantic. You've got Firefox, which is still material, and
Yep.
then there's even potentially other programmatic platforms where identity management continues to be just as important, even with the, temporary respite on the
Yeah.
removal of third-party cookies in Chrome. So I'd love to, to learn a little bit more about that plumbing, right? And how the plumbing manifests itself differently, when folks are on an iOS app, when folks are in another privacy compliant environment. And obviously in certain places you can't get PAI identifiers past a firewall. And in certain cases, you can potentially impute a certain amount of information and maybe at least improve the relevancy of the ad a little bit for the
Yeah.
publisher. So I'd love to have you walk me through that a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. So actually, the ecosystem did get fragmented basically over the past 5 years. And so even though Chrome ended up kind of walking back on that plan of deprecating third-party cookies, it took about 5 years for that decision to be articulated that way, right? So they punted on the deadline a bunch of different times. I think it was two or three times. And while that was happening, what we saw in the open web ecosystem is a multiplication of new ways of connecting identity between buyers and sellers. And so that is one of the areas that we're focused on, right? So when you look at alternative identifiers that emerged, basically leading to this eventual deprecation of third-party cookies that never happened, but over time, they got established and became really important spokes basically in the wheel of monetizing for publishers. So you have Trade Desk's UID2, Yahoo has their Connect ID, Criteo, Epsilon. There's a number of different identifiers that emerged as ways to reinsert signal, allowing advertisers to get the same kind of personalization, the same kind of measurement, attribution basically that they were accustomed to have. And so over time, as cookies still gradually kind of deprecated across all the different environments that you just mentioned, there are new approaches to identity that have emerged. And so when we look at what we have to do for publishers is really today to make use of them. It's just to establish this connecting tissue between the data that's available on the publisher side and make it available as a signal to the buy side. And that is the thing that makes advertising more relevant. It's what creates a yield improvement for publishers that can be important. So ranging anywhere from 5 to 20 some percent. If you look at the case studies that we've published, and there are also some blind areas in this ecosystem, right? So Apple did not ask anybody for feedback, when they rolled out their framework, and on the back of that, they've built an important advertising business as well. So it's not perfect, and we certainly see much more fragmentation than before, right? Than at the beginning of the programmatic ecosystem.
Yeah, so people probably think about the yield improvement as primarily being sort of the programmatic display ad ecosystem, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about the other programmatic ad ecosystems and the extent to which identity resolution and the ability to know a little bit more about the individual before they consume, let's say an audio ad or a video ad, how that ends up manifesting itself in improved yield. And you mentioned a range of yield improvement. So is that yield improvement consistent across different ad formats, or is it quite different in the different ad formats?
It's quite different. I mean, there's a wide range of variables that contribute to this. The format, of course, the type of inventory, the availability of first-party data on the publisher or platform side. But you're right to point out that this is not just about graphic ads on the open web. So of course, the same approach is also applicable in connected TV. We work with Triton Digital and iHeart Media, where we're having incredible results in creating a great impact for audio inventory. So obviously, the more authenticated first-party data you have, the better it is for the publisher. But one of the approaches, of course, also is to allow a publisher to understand and to know their audience better. So we have this data hub approach, part of the platform, which allows publishers to actually benefit from a range of third-party data vendors as well, where we'll work with companies like Experian, TransUnion, True Data, MediaWalla, and others. So reinserting signal is kind of a process that you have to go through, and everything kind of starts with your own authenticated inventory that you have access to.
So let's talk a little bit about the regulatory ecosystem as well, because obviously some of the other catalysts, in addition to Google's announcement with regards to the deprecation of third-party cookies, we also had GDPR, and we have in the United States some local and potential national regulation or legislation. And so, how has that changed in the way you and the publishers or broadcasters deal with, privacy compliant anonymization of individuals' data?
Yeah, well, we feel very confident that, of course, even though the programmatic ecosystem went through this Wild West phase, I would say, right, where slapping, thousands of cookies on a browser was okay, and thousands of companies having access to, I don't know how much data basically, and everybody was okay. We're slowly moving out of that age, right? And some geographies, some jurisdictions, of course, have been more innovative, or I would say more, have moved faster basically on that. So firm believers that this is not going to stop anytime soon. And what happened over time is that now there is an understanding, I think, and clear articulation that consent, of course, is important, that there's responsibility that comes with handling first-party data. When we work with alternative identifiers, there's also, a requirement for consent. There's all these things that basically didn't exist before that became part of the normal. Part of the work that we have to do as we move through these motions is to properly articulate, how we actually address these issues in all the different geographies and jurisdictions. There is a bunch of documentation that we make available, to legal folks and privacy folks at any given company. And one of the complexities that we actually have to deal with is that there's a lot of differences. It's a bit of a Rubik's cube, right? Like the thing that works, in one state in the United States is not necessarily the same thing that's required in, England or Spain or Canada or in a specific province in Canada. So there's a lot of complexity that has to be addressed there. Ultimately, when it comes to technology, there's only that much you can do with the technology. So our goal is to effectively provide technical controls on how data is used, what exactly can be done with the data. There's traceability that comes with it, but we cannot prevent somebody from misusing data, or doing something illegally by, onboarding data that was illegally obtained on the dark web or something, right? And this is one of the kind of misunderstandings about the capabilities of clean rooms. There's a lot of snake oil when you listen to some of the vendors. There are limits there. The best we can do really as an industry and as a vendor is to provide proper technical controls as of what we do with the data.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how this yield improvement delta ends up manifesting itself within publishers, at least from your conversations with them about how they make decisions about gating of content. Because obviously you've got the full subscription publishers, and then you've got sort of this continuum all the way to free, completely non-gated, no registration at all required. You don't get any kind of you may not even get a pop-up call to action to subscribe to anything. Right. So given these yield improvements, if your team is chatting with the teams at the publishers and they're sort of asking you your advice, so we don't feel our content is quite valuable enough to go to full subscription, but we're thinking of maybe doing partial gating, either limiting number of stories that are being viewed, et cetera. How does that end up manifesting itself into yield as they make these decisions about how free do they make their content?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's an intricate balance in value exchange between end users that don't want to be annoyed, that don't want to be logging in or doing an additional action and just getting to the right information right away. But I think all publishers we work with today are acutely aware of the fact that this is important, right? It is very important to have a set of first-party data that allows you to have the liberty to basically create positive outcomes when it comes to revenue. It's not easy. I think a lot of it can be measured, and our publishers work on that measurement, right? Like if you impose a certain gating, partial gating for the content, what exactly is the boost that you get, following that? And so there's a lot of A/B testing that goes on. But I think there was a bit of an arms race at the same time where publishers work on this because there is a real risk that if you take just LLM interfaces like ChatGPT, there is a risk of erosion of open web traffic, right? And we've seen this already. We have this anecdotal evidence from some publishers we work with and hear from where organic traffic coming from Google is in decline, and it goes anywhere from 10 to 30%. But that is like a very specific signal that shows that whatever inventory you do have, whatever traffic you do have, it's important to create value from it because there is a natural erosion of the overall volume. And so all these dynamics are kind of sort of new, but increasingly understood and very important. And so, what is the web, in a year, 2, 3, or 5 years, and what kind of value exchange do we need to set up with the users? I think it's a real problem that needs to be worked on.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the publishers that are freaking out about zero-click search in LLMs, right? I mean, probably the hottest category for the SEO team at Did It right now is generative engine optimization, or some people call it answer engine optimization. That's Shelley Palmer's preferred acronym for it. Regardless of what you call it, though, I mean, it's certain types of searches are manifesting more commonly in a chatbot type result as opposed to a 10 link Bing or Google search. So, those folks who aren't prepared for it on the publishing side and on the traditional marketer side really may end up finding themselves in a difficult situation. Um, what's next as far as industry trends? I mean, obviously that disintermediation of the free organic search traffic that the publishers and broadcasters potentially got used to and are now seeing erode, right? What sort of top of mind, obviously, Ken, was just this week, and there are probably a bunch of conversations going on there. So what else should people be thinking about and talking about?
Well, when it comes to publishers, I think what I hear from publishers is that they're actively working on developing video content, for example, or just non-text, if that's a term. So there is now a specific area of effort, specific area of concern. You mentioned Can. One thing that I continue to be fascinated with is that there's a bit of a meme of outcomes in ad tech now. This is the era of outcomes. And I struggle with that because to me, ad tech has always been about outcomes. Like that's the whole reason why this is such an incredibly competitive, cutthroat industry. It's because everybody's really trying to improve. There's a reset in ad tech, as I was talking about earlier, that happens occasionally, every bunch of years because of that, because there are major improvements, there are major things happening. But it's great to hear that people, care about results and outcomes. It feels like it's always been that way. The other major theme, of course, is AI. So there's AI consequences such as the ones that we've just discussed, but there's new opportunities also in kind of rewiring addressability in advertising using AI. There are real challenges there. There's this new kind of approach of using deterministic data and modeled contextual data as a way of addressing audiences, kind of a combination of deterministic and contextual as one signal. And we're seeing good preliminary results when it comes to that. I think there's going to be new approaches to measurement that will come from that as well. And generally, how to use LLMs in ad tech ends up being a question of how do you use it in a profitable way, because LLMs are extremely expensive, and ad tech, with trillions of events, with everything being real time, is not necessarily directly compatible with a traditional LLM approach. But what we're seeing again is new ways of modeling and addressing inventory that are really, really very promising. And that's really, I think, the focus for us and for other companies in the next couple of years. There's, of course, this is a compatible approach with, this agentic notion as well, and agents running everything. And we're very, very bullish on that too.
Yeah, so I'd love to get a little bit more into that modeling side of things, right? Because
Yep,
obviously, um, the more robust the data set that the publisher has of their overall population, and then the more robust the overall ecosystem has with regards to anonymized identity, the more robust the lookalike models can be. So that
that's right.
modeling, right? Um, a lot of folks had tried earlier forms of lookalike modeling on the brand and agency side and been
Of
quite
course.
disappointed, right? And like really with regards to what mattered to that brand or what mattered to that retailer or what mattered to that DTC company, clearly the lookalike wasn't capturing that in whatever that important secret sauce was, right? But that area is moving pretty quickly. So, how do we feel, or how do your modeling and data teams feel about the improvement that we've seen in lookalikes and in modeling in getting your next best impression, right? Because obviously the
Yeah.
direct identity, matched impression is going to be the best, right? So then you start to look at, okay, what's my next best impression opportunity if there's more budget available? And to what extent can one really say, oh, it's 80% as good, or 70% as good, or 65% as good as a direct identity resolved impression?
Yeah, and look, when it comes to lookalike modeling, so machine learning, of course, has been like one of the building blocks of ad tech for many, many years. Ultimately, when it comes to advertising performance on the buy side, it's a question of how do you measure, right? What is the conversion? What does it mean in the context where walled gardens basically don't share much data at all? And so, as you know, there's this last click kind of approach to measuring performance that completely kind of negates the value of everything else that was done. What we see in this new kind of iteration of these approaches is obviously, it's easy to imagine, and I've seen many a demo of agencies and advertisers basically coming up with something that's generated by an LLM. If I'm a brand and I want to sell to my customer, who should I be reaching? And then the model spits out, well, you should be reaching men 18 to 34 who are into sports, but not baseball and this and that. But the question is, how does this connect to actual inventory and actual data on the other
Yeah,
side? Like,
yeah,
it's okay to generate these briefs, but where the magic is to be created is really there.
yeah,
And what we realized over time is that actually, AI does require quality data at scale in order for these models to work. And because of the fact that we work with publishers, because of this footprint that we have, especially in the US, there's really an opportunity of leveraging LLMs and translating that initial kind of brief that is meaningless, that's disconnected from reality, connecting it to the actual reality where again, it's a mix of deterministic signal and contextual signal as well, using the same
right.
piping, using the same real-time bidding ecosystem that we have today. So that is very, very compelling. So as I mentioned, we do see interesting results so far. There is a connection to be made. The big challenge again is cost. Like how do you do this at scale with trillions of data points in real time, and ultimately the measurement has to reflect also the effectiveness of it. So the way you measure has to be a function of how you address as well. And so if it's not cookies, if it's not purely kind of deterministic signals, what is the proper way to measure that includes that contextual signal as well?
So on the buy side, obviously you're improving things on the publisher side, but on the buy side, different types of buyers are asking for different types of targeting, right? Obviously, custom audiences are super powerful to the extent that one can create an anonymized data set, and use it as a custom audience. But what role should the entire ecosystem have in educating the marketers on, hey, here's a way where you can sort of have your cake and eat it too, right? You can remain privacy compliant, but you can use use the data you have, your PII data, to sort of connect the impressions to the right people.
Yeah. Yeah, and data collaboration, is a discipline that answer these questions. So it's actually much easier than ever before for an advertiser to use real data on their customers from their loyalty program data, for example, whether it's hashed emails or phone numbers or what have you. And using data collaboration in the data cleaner approach, activate campaigns in a privacy safe way at scale by using these clean room APIs. And when we first started the company, clean rooms were kind of in their infancy. It was not yet a mainstream phenomenon, I would say. But today, over time, what we've seen, of course, is that all major data warehouses from AWS to Google's BigQuery to Snowflake and Azure, everybody now published and uses clean room APIs. And so at Optable, what we've done is we've developed a suite of clean room applications that make it easy, they make it easy simply to go from very personal data to a campaign that runs at scale using a modeled approach where some lookalike modeling, of course, is leveraged as well. And where the full extent of publishers' first party data goes into this modeling. Right, so only a small set of whatever the publisher knows about their customers actually ends up in the bid stream. Using the data clean room approach allows you to use the full extent of that data, creating audiences at scale and allowing advertisers to activate this way, using the same kind of programmatic pipes, using deal IDs and PMPs. And that is kind of new, right? So just how easy it is today for an advertiser to benefit from the data they've stored in their data warehouse. Really go from that raw data to a campaign that runs at scale, that is somewhat new. And it's extremely exciting, especially given the prevalence of data warehouses and, of course, how easy it is to collect data in the first place.
So I'd love your thoughts on something which I don't think has fully been materialized in the marketplace, or maybe if it has, I haven't noticed it. But obviously, for publishers or broadcasters, where there's more than one page view, or in the case of obviously video consumption, more than one opportunity to serve an ad, I don't feel like the ecosystem fully takes advantage of that lag, right? So obviously, a 500 milliseconds, 600 milliseconds in your first impression opportunity to decide, okay, who is this person? Not by person identity necessarily, but who is this person from a ad opportunity availability matching perspective. But you're going to see that person again, right? Potentially 3 seconds
Yeah.
later, 10 seconds later, 15 seconds later, whatever. And that would give an opportunity that if there's a high percentage chance you're going to see that person again within a window of time, within a session, let's say, that you could do an even better job of
Mhm.
putting the right ad with the highest yield in front of them at that instant in time. And so I don't, maybe it's all happening in the programmatic ad stack at the SSP levels, or wherever the plumbing has that intersection of data. But it certainly hasn't been articulated, maybe because it's too complex of a concept for most people to understand. But this idea that you could improve the ad targeting in session, right, as people
Yeah.
consume more advertising. And do you feel like that's an area where sort of AI level computing power could potentially add value because it can have a little bit more time to think about it as to who that individual is and what the best ad might be for them?
Yeah, and to me, all of that is kind of part of that notion of properly addressing identity on the publisher level.
Right,
And as we create these identity graphs for the publisher, that's effectively what it means, right? So the
right.
publisher knows who the person is. A second later, 5 minutes later, there's a state that is kept. There's the use of first-party cookies. Um, where I also feel there is a new opportunity maybe related to this is that over the past, I don't know, 10 years, basically, what we've seen, of course, is this huge multiplication of inventory that is sent to DSPs. There's more exchanges that have appeared. Any given ad impression actually is multiplied as a bid request through all different ad exchanges.
Yeah.
And the result is that the DSPs throttle, more than ever before. So there's
Mm.
a whole bunch of inventory that is handled by exchanges, that is made available by the publisher, and eventually just gets thrown out basically by DSPs without anybody knowing, without without there being even any understanding of how much is thrown out.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things that we're also working on now is this new opportunity to actually decision on the sell side. So some exchanges like Index Exchange, I think, was the first to kind of popularize this concept, allow for inventory to be discriminated at their level. So a company like Optable can effectively run an app in their data center to sitting on their pipe, and Index prides themselves on handling, of course, all inventory that is being served through them. And that's an opportunity to really decision on that level and make a deal ID available through the DSP, the same way it's been always working, but allowing for some business logic to be executed at that SSP level. And so the use of identity data, the use of contextual signals, and the use of LLMs, all of that now can live there, where you can actually create the right package for the advertiser at that level, and still make it available through the same pipes through the DSP. And so that is one of the kind of major innovations, like oddly enough, that happened like over the past little while. That's really exciting, and it kind of puts together everything else, again, from identity to contextual data to LLMs, without expecting DSPs really to do anything different. And that has been one of the challenges that I think in this industry.
Great. Well, any final thoughts? It's so fascinating stuff, starting to have smoke come out of my ears as I think through all the ramifications. But any final thoughts on what folks should be thinking about for the next year?
Oh, look, we're really excited to continue working with leading media companies to continue creating these results for them. It is truly an exciting time in ad tech. I'm perpetually fascinated by how fast this industry moves and how much things continue to change. But the rise of LLMs, the rise of AI, and especially this new kind of foundation for identity that we've been building is really, truly interesting and exciting. I think there's a lot of work that the ecosystem has to do over the next little while, but we're very excited about it. And thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate it. I learned a lot.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.